Well, first of all, I don't think they're really deregulating, especially at the pace of the Trump administration or Javier Milei in Argentina. So I think they definitely have indicated deregulation. I think that's more about housing because there is such a housing crisis here. So I was pleased to see the Labor Party tilt toward deregulation for in housing, but I think much of their talk about deregulation in the private sector is probably just talk, at least for now. I hope they follow through. It's not really their nature to be deregulators. Typically, parties of the left love regulation. The more, the better. So, look, if they're serious, then great. I welcome it. If it's not, then hopefully, someone else can put some pressure on them. And if it happens to be the Trump administration and the American model, great. But I think that would be great for the British economy if they did actually deregulate in the private sector.
These are reports that they are going through the deregulation policies, but critics argue that deregulation often benefits big businesses while hurting workers and consumers. So, is there
Yeah.
is a balance between cutting red tape and maintaining the economic fairness?
Well, I think cutting red tape and deregulating actually helps economic growth, right? But now you do, or these economists do have a point. It doesn't surprise me to find economists in academia that are against deregulation because they kind of lean left and they're usually, sort of Keynesian by nature. But remember, while they do have a point that it can sometimes help big business, that's what we have to be careful of. Because it's not deregulation that helps big business, it's regulation, because the regulatory burden can be maintained or handled by big business. And I think a great example of that is the overregulation in the financial sector in the US and to a certain degree in the UK, well, to a great degree in the UK after the great financial crisis in 2008 and 9. And what happened is the regulatory burden was welcomed by Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan. And the chairman of those companies both said to the regulators, look, this helps us. If you want me to hire, JP Morgan, for example, Jamie Dimon hired 13,000 lawyers and other administrative people to handle the regulatory burden. But the problem is small businesses can't handle that. It's the same amount of regulation, it's the same amount of paperwork, and yet a big company actually benefits from that. It's a competitive advantage. It puts the small and medium-sized companies out of business because they can't afford to hire the legal teams and the regulatory staff. So it's actually contrary to the comments from the economists you referred to. It actually the regulatory burden benefits big companies. It's deregulation that helps the entire economy and all companies.
So, the UK's regulatory reforms include relaxed financial market rules and easier housing development approvals. Could
Yeah.
these policies create economic growth, or do they risk repeating mistakes that could lead to past financial crises?
No, I think if they actually go through with this, it would be to the great benefit of the people in the United Kingdom as well as the economy and growth and business in general. So yes, and is there a risk of something, of course, there's always risk, but the more you regulate, the more of a burden it is on individuals and businesses. And so the deregulation movement comes after 15 years of dramatic overregulation. And so yeah, do you need the rule of law and property rights? Of course, and that's important to maintain, and that's one of the reasons investors like Western economies, because of the rule of law and because of property rights. But this regulatory burden that's allegedly designed to protect consumers, and it's just become an unaccountable administrative state, an unelected, unaccountable state. And I think I was pleased to see the Labour government at least indicate that they're willing to push back against that.
Mr. Greg, Brexit was framed as a way to escape EU regulations and create a more competitive economy.
Yeah.
Has deregulation helped Britain, or has it added new economic challenges.
No, I mean, unfortunately, the British governments, both Labour and Conservative governments, have not taken advantage of Brexit. And so, yes, they did officially leave the European Union, but they haven't taken advantage of their independence. They're still stuck in some of these EU regulatory burdens. And so, yeah, I think the economy and the markets are disappointed in the fact that in the sense that they did not take advantage. They did not actually deregulate. They have that option to deregulate, but they haven't taken advantage of it. And I think you saw that again from both the conservative as well as the Labour government. We conservatives were very concerned during before Brexit, before the referendum. We were worried, and philosophically, we were for it. We were advocates of Brexit, but our biggest concern was that the government, being a government that was sort of center right and guilty of regulatory overreach, we were afraid they wouldn't take advantage. And actually, we were right. They have not done it. And that's one of the reasons for the success of the Reform Party, who actually wants to deregulate, wants to take advantage of Brexit. But much of what was done in the subsequent administrations, after David Cameron left, it was Theresa May, then Boris Johnson, and then Rishi Sunak. Those administrations, those governments did not take advantage. They did not deregulate. They stayed in a lot of the EU customs requirements, and it's really been a drag on the UK economy. It's actually, Brexit without the advantages of Brexit. The only one who advocated for supply side economic reform and deregulation and tax reform was Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng, who had a great idea. Unfortunately, it wasn't able to be executed.
Now, proponents of the deregulation argue that excessive rules stifle innovation, especially in the tech and the artificial intelligence. Do you think deregulation will help Britain become a leader in emerging industries?
I hope so. And if they don't do it, then they have no chance of becoming a powerful player in those industries. So yes, absolutely. I think that. And if you just look at the European regulatory state and tax burden versus the US, there's no surprise that innovators, that disruptors always want to move to the US and develop these technologies. The number of billion-dollar companies in Europe is numbers in the double digits at best. In the US, it's in the triple digits, it's in even higher. And so, the statistics don't lie. There's a reason why innovation and disruption flourishes in the United States. And there's again less tax burden and less regulatory burden. So I see no chance of European countries, especially countries in the EU, of ever really catching up to the thriving economic growth in the US unless they deregulate. And the UK has the chance to do that because they're no longer burdened by the rules and regulations of the EU.